Today's episode of Market Talk is brought to you in part by GrowMark FS. Keeping up on the latest in ag is a challenge to say the least, but there are experts nearby ready to help. You'll find them at your local FS. You can trust them to bring you customized agronomic grain and energy solutions born of the latest thinking. That's because FS specialists receive continuous training that keeps them current on the latest trends, practices, and technologies. So you'll get local expertise that's both exceptional and up to date. Visit fssystem.com to learn how FS is bringing you what's next. And welcome into Market Talk for this Wednesday, August 18th. Jesse Allen here. We are live at Dakotafest in Mitchell, South Dakota here this week. And we thank you for joining us, making us part of your day here with Market Talk. Find us online, markettalkag.com. Find us on all your favorite streaming sources as well, including Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Google Podcasts, and so many more. Well, joining us here today live at the show, pleased to have Mike Miner with Professional Ag Marketing, Inc. joining us here in Mitchell today. And Mike, it's nice to be back at a farm show, even though it's hot, it's windy, but everyone is out in full force here today and enjoying the show, and I'm sure you guys are happy to be here as well, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a decent day here so far. I'll say it's hot, right?
Yeah.
But it says a lot for the time frame we're in August here to have this kind of heat and dryness. Hopefully we'll get some rains this next week to help settle things back down for these soybeans, but kind of inconvenient weather for this time of the year, I'd say.
Yeah, very, very true. Well, let's talk about the markets today, and I know weather's going to come up as a topic, I'm sure, but just overall look at the markets today. It was pretty quiet throughout much of the day. Corn really just didn't move off of unchanged today. Wheat, we saw some buyback in the overnight. We tried to hold that through the day. We ended up okay, a little off the highs. So not a lot to talk about there, but soybeans, we had some pressure overall in the markets today. So, I mean, just your thoughts on what you saw here at the close today.
Yeah, no problem. So I think part of the reasoning with the soybeans trying to take some profits here, crush numbers have been coming in a little bit low, so we could probably see a 10 to 20 million bushel setback in those numbers in this next report here. And then it's been a little interesting because for the most part here, besides the I-states, we haven't really had ideal weather for these soybeans for production. So like I said there, maybe we could see a smaller yield by the time the next WASDE report comes in on these soybeans. And they haven't really reacted quite well to it yet, I would say. If we end up closer to a 49 bushel soybean yield is what it's looking like for the nation, maybe the soybeans aren't quite supported enough. But then at the same time, you see crush already starting to pull back, and we've got tight ending stocks. So how good can it really get here if the funds don't really get their support behind it? And we have seen the funds been slipping out here over the last couple months. So I am worried about the time of the year we're going in and the direction of the market long term with us setting it up for a pretty bullish fundamental situation. And it's still struggled to really break into that upper trend of levels yet.
Yeah, and we talk about some of the bullish side of this market, especially soybeans. 10 straight days now we've had a soybean sale, a new crop to China and the unknown destinations, which, for a few months there we were begging for demand activity. It vanished, and now it's back all of a sudden. And you bring up weather. There's talk of some good rains in the northwestern belt here this week and end of the week into the weekend. And I think at this point, if we catch that good rain, widespread rain, that could really help this soybean crop at least finish off here and maybe give us a decent crop out of soybeans.
Yeah, it could. And I think everything you said there is pretty much spot on. And this isn't anything new, right? This isn't groundbreaking. It's been going on. But I will say over the past 30 days, you look at some of your main states, Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, you're at 50% of normal precipitation over those last 30 days. And if we see that continue, the soybean market should get interesting. But we've held the held the 100-day support for the moving average on the soybeans here, and I'd like to see that continue. Hopefully we can break into an upper trend, break into a new trading level with that holding, but if we break below that, it could get ugly fast, and those funds could have a pretty good reason to get out here at the right time of the year for those guys.
And, you look at individuals and their marketing plans right now, and a lot of guys that are maybe holding. I know some have started to do some more selling possibly as they're getting a better idea what their crop is going to look like. We're starting to have these crop tours. I know you guys just had yours.
Yep.
We talked about that recently. We have some others going on right now, and not really finding any surprises out there. It seems like right now, whether we're talking corn, beans, or even wheat, a lot of guys maybe just revisiting their marketing a little bit, but more or less they're kind of waiting to see where this whole market shakes out the next couple of weeks, just with all this data that still has to kind of feed its way into the market.
Yeah, and I think that's where we start to slide into complacency. And I think it's going to be very important for the row crop farmer in August to not become complacent with these price levels going into fall. Historically, we see the screw me later program right at the elevator at the end of August as we see a seasonal low come in. That's approaching us soon. It might be a little bit delayed this year, for example. But I think it's important that you got to be aggressive. Well, you kind of know what your crop's going to be now. I know whether or not I've got a 20 bushel soybean yield or a 50 at this point. And same with the corn side of things. You've got a pretty good idea. So maybe get a little bit more aggressive. Your break evens, and we've got some pretty good profit margins in these crops today at these price levels. So I feel like guys shouldn't get complacent at this point. And I think it's a very important time frame for guys to really start to push these sales and into 22 and 23 as we start those as well.
Well, now we talk about some sales, and obviously, looking at just the 21 crop, and, there's obviously plenty of tools in the toolbox out there as far as options and things of that nature. But looking at just straight cash, looking at basis levels right now, let's talk about that because we don't talk about that enough on the show. And we've seen a lot of firming basis levels here throughout this year. And I know some of it kind of varies whether you're Eastern Belt or Western Belt, obviously. But talk about what you're seeing as far as basis levels, cash sales, and just maybe some of what you're talking about with your clients right now.
Yeah, so there's been a line that started to trend. If you drew a line from southwest Iowa to northeast Iowa and just had that line go on forever, anything northwest of that, I've been patient to lock in basis for new crop. On old crop, I'm being very aggressive to get it going. So let's talk about spreads and basis on old crop. Old crop, I think it's very important to not let this situation slip by you. And if you've got corn in the bin today, I think it's time to get it gone. Now, this is from a spread and basis perspective because you've got, let's say, $1 over basis on September corn futures. Okay, December new crop futures are, let's say, 20 under today in South Dakota, Minnesota. That has to come together at some point, and you do not want to be holding on to your corn in that bin by the time new crop gets you. And I think those two are just going to come together. And I think that old crop, that level is going to fall a lot harder than you'll see new crop come to old crop. And we've got a lot of sales on, I know this, for early fall, so you see actually a pretty good carry in the market between December and March today, as that's been bumping up against 8 cents carry, which isn't too bad historically for where prices are at. Historically you're closer to a 10 average. That's important, I think, because past March, there's not really any carry opportunity to July. If you take all this, put it into perspective for any old crop, it's telling you it's an inverted market still. Get rid of it faster than later. For new crop, I'm still somewhat patient northwest of that line I talked about in Iowa to lock in any basis. Futures, totally. Go for it. Lock it in. I'm a huge fan of it today at these. If it makes sense for your business, I'm for it. But basis, I'm not too aggressive on. South and east of that line, you've got a good crop. I'd probably be pretty aggressive about it at this point. And maybe you can get paid a little bit to carry it into the winter months.
Yeah, and a lot of things to consider, I think, when it comes to that, as you mentioned, all great points here. And, we talk about the haves and the have-nots this year, and that's really kind of just been not only the line for the crop, but for marketing decisions, too. It's like, all right, if you're in the Dakotas, if you're northwest Iowa, western Minnesota, you gotta take a little bit of a different approach to your marketing plan this year, and even moving forward, because, knock on wood, if we stay dry in some of these areas, what are we going to be looking at into next year. And I think maybe there's some guys who are maybe thinking about that in the back of their mind as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you go back to 2012 and you looked at what the next year's soybean price was giving you, it was pretty much 12 or below for that next year on the futures. This year, you've been at 12.5 for quite a while now for November of 22, and this is no 2012 event, I think, when it comes to the size of the crop, obviously. So I've been pretty aggressive in telling guys, hey, don't sleep on 22 and 23 and the opportunities out there. Your expenses are going up, I get that, but that adds risk to your operation. If we fall back down to a $10 price on beans, or if we fall down to a $4.50 price on corn, which totally could happen by the time we get there with multiple crop years to fix that problem, that could be a lot more risk on the table for you and your operation. And seeing today's opportunities out that far, I can work a sheet pretty well to try to make some money out into that far. So don't sleep on those further out months.
Mike Miner, Professional Ag Marketing, Inc., joining us here on Market Talk today as we're at Dakotafest in Mitchell, South Dakota. Jesse Allen with you here. And, Mike, let's switch the conversation to livestock. We had a really, really strong day in cattle and hogs today. Cattle were the leader of the market here. Now, we look at cutout values. I mean,
Yes.
This has just been skyrocketing. It's up some $30 in the last couple of weeks. I mean, we're trying to test those June highs again.
Yep.
We know the issues in the cattle markets, though. I moderated a panel here yesterday talking about the cattle market issues and the packer margins and everything. But, we look at these levels. Seems like we're trying to hopefully find a way to break out of this range, although it's very, very slowly. But you look at a day like today, we look at the cutout values, we look at demand. What are your thoughts on this cattle market, where it stands here as we head into the back half of August?
At some point, I would see a significant downside correction coming in the wholesale meat prices. Obviously, it's not happening today. But, the next seasonal low is kind of coming at us in late September, early October. So by the time that would start to turn back around, I would like to make an observation of, the cash market. Maybe we are a buck higher on the top this week or so in the north, but it's struggled to make its way higher. And I feel like that's been a little disappointing with what cutout levels have been doing in box beef values. So on the way back down, I wouldn't expect the Packers to be quite friendly on the way down, right, if they've been this hard on the way up. So I feel like that's worth noting when it comes to the price of these fat cattle going forward. It's going to make things interesting, but slaughter, we're ahead of last year and prior week over week there, but the slaughter level, 650 to 655K, up from last week's 639. It seems like there isn't a supply problem at the moment, and Packers see huge profits, so they're doing what they can to give the guy a bone here for a little bit. But I would say once those box beef values turn lower, I might not want to be on the seller side of things. So we've got a cattle on feed report coming on Friday there. Cash trading is going to be erratic, probably, and late in the week here. So that'll make things interesting going into the late part of the week, and we'll probably forget about it by next Monday like we usually do with the cattle on feed. But, we'll see what they come out with. Yeah,
and that cattle on feed report, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see a bulk of cash trade happen Friday afternoon after that report,
Late,
2:30, 3 o'clock Friday afternoon. It'll be interesting to see what happens on the cattle side. Hogs, you mentioned seasonally and demand, and I think there's some worry in the hog market right now that we're really going to start to see some of that seasonal demand kind of lessen here with hogs. We were up today. Pork cutout values have kind of, been trending a little bit lower, and I know the cash index, I mean, $20-some, $21, I think, between the cash index and the October contract. So there's a few disconnects, it seems, right now in the hog market with what we're seeing cash-wise versus what we're seeing on the board.
Yeah, that's a big topic on the hogs here is just October and being at that huge premium compared to where the October being way below where the index is there. So that's been an impressive topic to talk about here as of late. Direction of that, October usually tries to make its way higher here for a little bit, but at some point it's going to have to give up and probably break to the low side just from a seasonal perspective. So Packers continue to be able to find enough pigs to get through this thing, and we'll see where we go from here on that side of things. We've got to keep this demand strong. and those cutout levels up there, and maybe we can push October up to it a little bit more. But it's a ticking time bomb when you start talking about these October hogs.
Definitely, and hopefully a lot of our hog producers maybe got some things marketed and whatnot, and made some money this summer, because we all know there was plenty of profit on the table there this past summer. Mike, any thoughts, final thoughts, or outside market-wise? I know we haven't touched on the stock market or crude oil or anything, but obviously we had a sharp sell-off there yesterday. We got a lot of the geopolitical factors that are out there, and those things are always swirling around the commodity sector. Mike, any thoughts there, or any other final thoughts for us in general?
Yeah, so crude oil futures there, they did dip below the 50 and 100-day moving averages, so I think that's worth noting, kind of towards the 3-month lows. We've seen a little bit of the funds get out of the commodity index overall, right? We've started to see that kind of slip lower. Lumber's taking a big discount. Crude oil starting to slide. A few of these commodities are just starting to lose a little bit of the momentum they've had. And even as of late, it concerns me just because we've seen some pretty fundamental support layers hit this commodity market. And now that they're not making as big of an impact or that big push and getting that push from funds, it scares me a little bit about the overall direction of commodities. Maybe inflation is transitory, and maybe it does start to tip over here a little bit and go back to normal. And for commodities, I think that would be a sell-off in the long run. So that worries me. So I'm just going to say, look at your balance sheets. Do you got to make money this year or not? And how big of a win do you need? And going forward, too, don't be afraid to lock up some profits for any of the commodities at this point. Lean hogs, the crush is working excellent right now for next year, so look at that. And then for the cattle, it's a toss-up, right? You've got feeder cattle that are incredibly expensive. Corn's expensive. That live cattle market, it would be awesome to see some more support underneath of that. But they're pretty high, so we'll see how long this has got.
Well, to your point, use the baseball analogy, a couple strong doubles, just as good as a home run.
Exactly.
So I think that's something we need to keep in mind. We should mention, too, I know you have a great team across the Midwest. If folks need a little help with their marketing advice or marketing plans in general, how can they get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, get a hold of us on our website at professionalagmarketing.com, or give us a call at 507-449-2030 and ask for any of us. We'd love to just even chat about anything to do with the markets.
Definitely. Mike, I appreciate you joining me here at Dakotafest today on Market Talk. Thanks so much for the time and the insight, and we'll talk again soon, my friend.
Thank you.
And again, that's Mike Miner with Professional Ag Marketing, Inc., joining us here today on Market Talk live from Dakotafest in Mitchell, South Dakota, day 2 of Dakotafest here, enjoying our time as part of the show. Catching up now with Niki Jones, the Director of Events here for Dakotafest. Niki, it's great to catch up with you, and I tell you what, so far it's been a great Dakotafest here for 2021.
It really has. I mean, we have seen some great crowds coming through, and, I think, all the exhibitors have been having great conversations, and the programming that we've had has been very popular, so we're pretty happy with it.
Definitely. And, obviously the heat, that's had a little bit of a damper, but folks are troopers, they're grabbing water and they're making their way around, and they're seeing all of what is happening here, because we have everything from, new technology to seed to folks in the livestock industry. There's so much to take in here at Dakotafest.
There is so much to take in, and it's warm, but man, in the mornings it feels really good.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to come out in the morning and walk the show, because like you said, we've got 450 exhibitors with anything from tractors to services to implements to buildings. I mean, if they make it for ag, it's here. So
And the wind does help a little bit to keep things cool.
Yep.
We are appreciating
yes
that. Talk about, obviously looking at last year, we've had this whole thing with COVID, and we weren't able to have shows and things of that nature. It's got to be nice to be back this year and have a crowd here again for Dakotafest and really just take it all in.
It is nice, and I think that people feel it, like the energy, even though it is a little bit warm. people are happy and glad to be out and seeing people they haven't seen in a while and talking to their dealers they haven't dealt with in a while. So I think that it's important for the community too. The community is, I think Mitchell doubles in size when we come into town, so they're happy with it.
Definitely. I know we still have a great third day on tap Thursday. Talk about maybe some of the highlights we have for Thursday, the final day of Dakotafest.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do, because I'm pretty excited about the Women in Ag event that starts at 10 a.m. And that's going to be a panel of women farmers talking about their perspective on the ag industry, followed by, we're going to be recognizing 5 amazing women for the Dakotafest Woman Farmer Rancher of the Year Award. And the governor, Kristi Noem, is going to be here, and she's going to award the finalist with her award. So we're excited to hear from the governor as well.
And that's just another great event. I know we've obviously had different panels on livestock, cattle markets. We've had senators here this week, and a lot of an update from D.C. and just a lot of great panels that Dakotafest, you guys have put on here throughout the week. And that's got to be nice, too, to have so many influential folks here and putting on great panels and great discussions.
Yeah, it is. And, Dakotafest's mission really is to bring ag producers together with what's going to help them learn and grow, whether that's conversations with dealers, whether that's education sessions. We've got stuff going on in the livestock tent with demonstrations. And so, whatever we can provide to help, we want to have it here.
Definitely. Well, and I know final day of Dakotafest is going to be happening. Folks can get tickets and they can learn more as well, dakotafest.com. The app, I know for those folks who carry around those smartphones, the app's been very handy for me here this week. And I know that's been a recent thing in the last few years you guys have had that.
Yep. And what the best part about it is when we get so many people down here, we don't always have the strongest cell signals and Wi-Fi, but if you already have the app on your phone, you don't have to worry about it because you don't need that strong signal. It's already there. So.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. Again, dakotafest.com. Day 3 of Dakotafest on Thursday. Make sure you make it out here to Mitchell, South Dakota, and join us. Niki Jones with Dakotafest. Thanks for joining me and catching us up on everything that's been going on with Dakotafest. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Jesse.
And again, that's Niki Jones, the Director of Events here for Dakotafest. We thank her for joining us today. And also Mike Miner joining us for our market analysis from Professional Ag Marketing Inc. here on the show today. Live from Dakotafest. We'll be back here for day number 3, the third and final day of Dakotafest tomorrow in Mitchell, South Dakota. That's going to do it for Market Talk here on this Wednesday, August 18th. Find us online, markettalkag.com. I'm your host, Jesse Allen, wishing you a great rest of your day.